Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Green Space. My name is Terrance McKnight. I'll be your host tonight, kind of guiding us through what has been such an adventure as we look at this American Cycle by August Wilson. You know, for 5 complete decades, August Wilson experienced life in America, and after deciding that his voice was equally potent and his story equally beautiful as that of Eugene O'Neill, Tennessee Williams, and Henrik Ibsen, Wilson set out on a journey that chronicled 10 decades of the African-American experience. And for the first time, the very first time, the August Wilson estate has granted the rights to record all 10 of his American Century Cycle plays here in the Green Space. Tonight's conversation is all about his use of music and dance. And we've invited some friends, choreographers, directors, musicians to help us have this conversation. So let's welcome them to the stage now. As I was walking out, Ruben Santiago said to me, "Don't start no stuff." So you'll get to see and perhaps hear from Ruben Santiago tonight. My first guest is Bill Sims Jr. Bill Sims Jr. became a professional musician when he was 14 years old. He hasn't quit since then. He's toured the world and shared the stage with legends such as Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, the OJs, and he's released 2 albums, composed original music for plays, film, and he's the subject of a 10-hour PBS documentary. Bill Sims Jr. Catherine Bostic is a Tony-nominated singer, songwriter, and composer who's worked on and off Broadway and in film. She's recorded music with such artists including Katie Lang, Ryuichi Sakamoto, Nas, and David Byrne. She has also created the Broadway score to August Wilson's Gem of the Ocean. Please welcome Catherine Bostic. Garth Fagan is the founder and artistic director of the award-winning and internationally acclaimed Garth Fagan Dance, which has been celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. He's won just about every award a theater choreographer can win. He's also Chancellor Award-winning Distinguished University Professor Emeritus at the State University of New York, where he's taught for over 3 decades. Please welcome Garth Fagan. Ken Robeson has danced on Broadway. He's choreographed dozens of shows on stage, television, and film. He's best known for his work on Avenue Q. He went on to win 3 Tony Awards, including, or I should say, he lately choreographed The Piano Lesson, directed by Ruben Santiago at the Signature Theater. Please welcome Ken Robeson. So where do we begin? August Wilson, we're talking about blues, dance, music. I want to begin in like the 1960s because August Wilson was in his 20s before he consciously heard blues for the first time. He was in his 20s, living in Pittsburgh, and he heard blues for the first time in the 60s. The tune was by Bessie Smith called "Nobody in Town Can Bake a Sweet Jelly Roll Like Mine." And like spiritual, sometimes the blues has a double entendre, so Bessie may not have been actually talking about some sweets, but we'll go through that tonight with my guests. So let me just start, and you guys can just field some of these questions as you wish. But I want to know from you all, talk about the role that dance and that music plays throughout these 10 plays. How significant, how important, how integral is music and dance in the work of August Wilson?
Well, for me, the music is one of the most important things, but important for the music to stay out of the way of August's words, but to set a period, set a time in people's mind, what decade, what part of the country this takes part in, you know. That's one of the biggest things for me when I'm writing for August Wilson, is to know what the time period is, and not to put an instrument or something in just because it sounds good. Sometimes the absence of something will make you go to a place or a time, you know. One of my pet peeves is to see something done before 1927 and you hear a steel guitar. Steel guitar was invented in 1927, so it shouldn't be there. And so I think that's, for me, that with August takes such care in setting a time and place for his plays that I should take the same time and care. And
well, when concerning the dance, it's part of communication also. So when I'm working on his pieces, I find that the movement has to communicate as well as the words also.
Well, it's an interesting question because, well, first of all, I just have to clean something up a little bit. You announced me as a Tony-nominated singer-songwriter. I'm like, whoa, these are lovely accolades. I have a partial credit in a sound design that I did with Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo, so I think that might be what you're referring to. But my greatest award thus far really has been working with August Wilson directly, which I had the good fortune of experiencing when I worked with him on Gem of the Ocean. And the music, I have to actually say it really wrote itself, because the words and the feeling and the intensity of August's textures is such a rich tapestry that you really just have to get out of the way, and you will be led exactly where to go sonically. It's not about the music is another huge character in all of his work. It's the spine. It's part of this effective storytelling, and for me, when I worked with him, we went through a lot of back and forth exchange in that I had very strong ideas of what I wanted, and it ultimately got down to very subtle nuances that would sort of be a continuum of what the characters were already essentially becoming. It was about, the music was very transformational. So for me, I find that part of experiencing his work made me a richer artist, made me a more compelling artist, made me more honest and authentic. And his work, it requires that. So I'm still actually, that's like probably one of the highest events of my life, was working with him on Gem of the Ocean.
I'm wondering how much skill is required of the actors when you take on a role in an August Wilson play. How well do you have to be able to sing? How well do you have to dance?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that if you're true to the piece, you really it's not important, to be a great, a good the dancer, because everybody, all black people weren't good dancers, so it's fun to get people, who were a little, who were, quirky, and so if you, playing if you have studied the character, so you move. When I choreograph the work, I come from what the character would do. And if I get an actor that may be a little askew when it comes to dance. So then I find something that an actor is very good in, and so it shows up. It shows up real, no matter what. It shows up real in that way.
But can you also put into your work the period, the time period of the play, and the dances that were happening at that time, that were a bigger expression of what August was saying than just the dances that they did for party dances? You've been wonderful with that, and it's a very important part.
You're right about that, and you would have to say what Bill said, that when I start from the work, I made sure that it's really about what dance is not to do. If the piece is set in 1938, you want to be careful not to do anything that's iconic after 1938, and that drives me crazy to see things from the 50s and people doing the jerk and the pony and the twist. Now, unless that person invented the jerk and the pony and the twist, if it's about that, that's different. So you want to start from where you want to start from what not to do. So if you do something from 1938, you can go from there back. Now, when I did a piano lesson, I made sure to use farm animals as examples of what dance to do. The chicken peck, a turkey dance, a slop, which is not really a farm animal, but so I use those forms of dance to help to enhance whatever the music is, and to help to color the character.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk more about specific dances, specific music. I want to talk about how important the blues were to August's plays, and were there other music forms or other music styles out of the African American tradition that he used. But first, before I do that, I want to go back to our first installment of the cycle here in the Greene space, where Ma Rainey was performed here, and we've got a clip that we want to go to and check out Ebony Joanne in the title role of Ma Rainey. Give us a sense of some of the music that's happened as part of this cycle already. Guys, you got that clip ready? Oh, the video is coming.
1, a 2, y'all know what to do. All right, boys. You done seen the rest. Now I'm gonna show you the best. Ma Rainey's gonna show you her black bottom.
Way down south in Alabama, I got a friend they call Dancing Sammy, who's crazy about all the latest dances. Black bottom stomping, 2 babies prancing. The other night at a swell affair, as soon as the boys found out that I was there, they said, "Come on, Ma, let's go to the cabaret." When I got there, you ought to hear them say, "I wanna see the dance you call the black bottom. I wanna learn that dance. I wanna see the dance you call your big black bottom. It'll put you in a trance." All the boys in the neighborhood, they say your black bottom is really good. Come on and show me your black bottom. I wanna learn that dance. I wanna see the dance you call the black bottom. I wanna learn that dance. Come on and show me the dance you call your big black bottom. It puts you in a trance. Early last morning, about the break of day, Grandpa told my grandma, "I heard heard him say, get up and show your old man your black bottom. I wanna learn that dance. I done showed y'all my black bottom. You ought to learn that dance.
Ebony Joanne, evoking Ma Rainey and August Wilson plays here in the green space. Now, I want to ask you, Garth Fagan, because you won a Tony Award for your work, your choreography on The Lion King. And a lot has been made about August's connection to the blues. I remember a few years ago, a friend of mine from West Africa heard the blues for the first time. And she said, Terrance, where did you get this village music? I said, what do you mean village music? She said, this music from the village. I said, this is the blues. She said, what's the blues? I said, well, it's, some music that came out of America, grew in the South. She said, no, this village, this music from the village. So talk about the connection between music of the village and the blues. I mean, what did my friend hear in the connection between this African music and this blues music that is, attributed to the African-American experience?
The deep, deep, deep pain, the deep expression, that is the blues, is similar pain and expression that exists in Africa for different reasons, not because of slavery, because we sometimes forget that Africa had great kingdoms and royalty and what have you. But that innate, I'll say, black expression that is from Africa, that's what she's talking about when she says village music. And we had the fortune to tour all over Africa. We did 10 countries in 12 weeks. And it was amazing that you always had, the languages were different, the rhythms were different, but the was the same thing. And whoever was dancing it from whatever country, that was there, and it hit you right here. And you felt it in your muscles and in your bones. And I think that's what she was talking about. And that's something that August Wilson and his dear friend Romar Bearden really believed in and loved and expressed. And we'll talk some more about Romy and August Wilson later.
Now, August Wilson had a wonderful quote about the blues, and our guys are going to put this slide up so you all can kind of just look at it and meditate on it for a second. But he talked about what the blues meant to him. He says, I know that contained in the blues is an entire philosophical system. Contained in there is the cultural response of Black America to a world in which they found themselves. The music is made up of Black life. And the plays are likewise made out of the same thing the blues are made out of. So they are the blues. I am the blues. August Wilson said also that blacks don't claim Africa and that he felt it was criminal that we don't celebrate emancipation. But I would tell you, Brother August, that we're celebrating emancipation 150 years here in the green space, and we're celebrating with you. We're trying to honor you through these plays and through these talkbacks, so thank you for the work. And earlier tonight, before you all got here, we had a little jam session. I was just kind of in the back, and Catherine was at the piano, and Ruben Santiago had his harmonica, and Brother Sims had his guitar. It was a great time. It was all improvisatory, and that is seemingly what seemed to feed August Wilson. I mean, he essentially wanted to do with his plays what Romare Bearden did through his work. Garth, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, the connection between Romare Bearden and August Wilson.
Both of them cut to the essence of whatever it was they were talking about or trying to depict on the stage or on the canvas. And I did a dance tribute to Romare Bearden, and August Wilson saw it and he loved it. He just wouldn't stop talking about it. And I have a cherished note from him about that piece. But they didn't do any BS.
No.
This is what it is. This is what it was. This is what it maybe ought to be. But they cut straight to the chase. No going around in circles and circles and circles. And sometimes it's painful. I mean, Bearden has a piece called Down Home also. It's so painful, but it's so beautiful, you know, because it is the truth, it is the essence, it's the texture, it's the color, it's the language. It's the language of Pittsburgh that he was talking about, or whatever he was talking about. It is the perfect word, perfect phrasing, perfect texturing for that scene, that moment, that time.
Now you talk about that in the music, in African music, and the blues. And Joe Turner, you scored that, Catherine.
Well, I worked on the Mark Taper production that Felicia Rashad directed
Now,
recently.
Now there's a character, Bynum Walker, who is a conjurer. Can you talk about, because again, here we are talking about the blues being the backbone to August's plays, but this conjurer, I mean, we're talking about maybe 40, 50 years after emancipation, so there are people walking around this country who were former slaves, and certainly sons and daughters of slaves. So how do you, as a composer, address that musically? I mean, you can't really necessarily deal with the blues. Blues hadn't been recorded.
Right.
Maybe they were being played in Mississippi. But what African elements show up in a character like Bynum? How do you make that connection?
Well, I think the African elements were demonstrated in very subtle ways. The way she directed Bynum, it was very. I didn't segue into any specific sort of African drumming or what have you, because I think that his character and the characterization of that quality comes from such a deep internal awareness. It's an internal sonic sensibility of how am I going to communicate this awareness, this beingness that is so intrinsic in my soul. I don't, so what I try to do is I try to have the music go to that place. I was really mindful of having the music come from this place that speaks of what you're talking about, but also carries it to makes it have a through line with all the other types of music that was going on at that time. We used spoons and washboards, and I had the fiddle playing these very keening and plaintive kind of evocative qualities, and then there was comedic and fun and partying, aspects. There was the juba. So, but in terms of the African element, I know that was there was a very fine line in the way in which we worked that in this, for instance, in the scene, The City of Bones, Jim of the Ocean, because he wanted, at least my remembrance of this, is that he wanted that mystical quality to be there, but he didn't want it to overshadow the actual inner transformation that Citizen was going through. And that this was, in other words, it was such an understood and sort of unspoken way of life already. It was already something, that's why Aunt Esther was sought after. She was sought after because of this ageless, timeless ability that she had that had its roots in Africa. But the divination of it was something that he didn't want to overstate with a lot of the African drumming and whatnot, at least when we talked. So I had to walk a really fine line, and how am I going to communicate that part of our history and our legacy? How am I going to evoke this sort of ancestor presence and at the same time have something otherworldly about it as well?
Did those characters like a conjurer or a soothsayer, that may have come out of, straight out of an African tradition, did those seem to disappear during August's plays as we go on through the century? I mean, by the time we get to 1960 or 1970, do we see those kind of characters? And Bill, I'll direct this question to you because I want to ask you about Jitney, and in terms of like the music, how do you address the music of the 70s? I mean, which music from the Black experience do you deal with in that play?
Well, I take from all different places. I mean, for the 70s, for me, it was all about the funk. You know, it's about the funk came in. But as we were talking before, music in the Midwest, places like Pittsburgh and Ohio and Tennessee and Virginia, it's very regional. So you could be in Pittsburgh and listen to the radio and hear something that you won't hear in San Francisco, dances that you won't see.
Right.
You know, it's very regional. And so I tried to keep that in mind. I had people in my life that affected me as far as funk, the OJs, Lakeside, the High Players, groups like that were famous in the Midwest long before they became national stars. And so they were famous around Pittsburgh, and I used to play in Pittsburgh a lot. And the jazz, the organ. I had a scene where there was organ music. Organ trios were very big in Pittsburgh. It's George Benson and Stanley Turrentine, all those people come from Pittsburgh. And so I try to get into that town, and think what they're listening to. And they're not listening to what's on the national scene because they're not on the national scene. It's a little mining town. So, the music I wrote for Jitney was something that you would recognize, as part of the whole Black experience, but was not top 10, pop music. So, and also, it changes. The farther away we get from Honest or from Jim of the Ocean, the music changes. It's less and less of the African in there, but it's still there. Like that, it's still there, but less and less. The voices change. There's no vocal in August's, some, but in Jitney. But you hear the voices change. Early in the century, the voices had really tight vibrato like Africans do. And as it got farther away from that, it became this, and they say, and you hear it also in the instruments and the horns. The horns imitate the voice. So like on Ma Rainey's, you hear the tight vibrato in the cornet, for that period. It's really close to the West African vocal thing. But, August's plays are very local. You were talking about singers. How do you get an actor to sing? One of the notes I gave one actor was, you're an actor, act like a singer. And that's the beauty of community, too, with singers, that you got great singers and you got singers that aren't so good, but we all sing. So you don't have to be a great singer to sing in our community.
Since you're on mic right now, talk about your personal relationship with August Wilson.
I got to meet August once in Boston. They were doing Jitney. They were rehearsing Jitney there. And for me, August Wilson wrote these plays to keep African-American traditions alive, and that means the music that I love, blues. I mean, I think he wrote these plays. For me, he wrote these plays for me, And I'm just so happy every time I get to do one because it makes me dig deeper into my culture, into my history, and find out more about who I am as a person, as a musician. And there's nothing better than that for a musician, to learn. Right. Every time I do an August Wilson play, I don't care how many times I do it, I learn something new. And that's a challenge of August and the beauty of it. Mm-hmm.
Now, at some point, one of you may be inspired to get up and go to the piano, Catherine, and play something in G. And play something in G minor like we were doing earlier today. Just whenever you're ready, because I got some questions that we can ask till then, but when you feel so moved.
Well, I'm gonna need some help. I'm gonna need some help, man. Come on, Ruben. We're gonna try something here.
Right, she's making her way to the piano, but I want you all to know.
Maybe we can get Ruben Santiago Hudson out here. We get Ruben out here too.
one thing, Terrance, you know, sometimes gets lost when you talk about the music in August Wilson. He talks about he's the blues. So listen to the licks in the plays, the things that he says. You know, the words that he uses, some of the phrases are taken directly from blues songs. And if you have a real strong blues vocabulary where, you know, you have some albums, y'all get some blues albums if you ain't got them. Because they're clearly and definitively the keepers of our stories. When it was a flood down in Mississippi, it's in the blues. When Martin Luther King got killed, it's in the blues. When and John F. Kennedy got killed, it was in the blues. When my old lady left me, it was in the blues. And I didn't have no money to pay the rent, it was in the blues. And when I just got paid, it was in the blues. So if you, it's a celebration. It's not a defeat. We didn't get defeated. The blues is like, hey, we didn't get defeated. You know, if you say rock's in my bed, you know, but he still got up in the bed. It's some people ain't had no bed. So that's a celebration, you know, that he did have somebody in his bed and I'm going to Chicago, sorry, but I can't take you. Ain't nothing in Chicago a nappy-head woman like you can do. Next thing you know, he take it to Chicago. So, you know, it's like, it's such a celebration. And I always tell the actors when I'm directing, go to the blues. I just told a young brother that's coming in to do some work with us, and he said, what should I be reading? I said, you should be listening to the blues, because you'll hear them licks. You hear just how we talk. But anyway, we'll do something.
We got some blues. August had about 2,000 records, 2,000 LPs, and he loved the blues, so we got something happening right here in the green space. This is part of the American Century Cycle. August Wilson plays and talkbacks at the green space at WNYC and WQXR. My name is Terrance McKnight. We've got a panel of guests, and we're listening to music right now. That's Miss Catherine Bostic at the piano.
Wow. And my other extraordinary guest and company, Bill Sims.
Ruben Santiago Hudson. I think he's got a harmonica.
Come on, Big Sam. Come on, Big Sam.
Early one morning, just about to break a day. Early one morning, baby, just about to break a day. I reached over and hugged my pillow. where my baby used to lay. All night long, baby.
All night long.
My heart was aching, but it felt so good. All night long, my mind. My heart was aching, but it felt so good. Cause I knew, yes I did, the way a woman ought to treat you. Come on, boy.
I got the blues for breakfast, right out of my drinking glass. I'm having the blues for breakfast, right out of my drinking glass. Somewhere over the nighttime, baby, our love slipped into the past. I know a bed ain't supposed to cry, but these tears are falling fast. I know a man ain't supposed to cry, but these tears are falling fast. Baby, all these women I've been dogging is why my love don't see the light.
Going to Chicago. Going to Chicago. There ain't nothing in Chicago that a sweet little boy like you can do for me. Oh, 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 no. When I get there, gonna find a little red rooster in the square. Find a little red rooster in the square. Sorry, I can't take you. Going to Chicago. Going to Chicago. Sorry, I'm so sorry that I cannot take you, babe. Oh, no, 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 there ain't nothing like a sweet little boy like you can do for me.
Now, August Wilson said that blues is the ladder by which Africans climbed into the New World. Amiri Baraka said, if you want to know where black people are at any point in our sojourn in the wilderness of America, listen to the music of the period. As composers, as choreographers, as directors, what music do you listen to of this period to try to address where black folk are? Do you listen to commercial radio, which may not necessarily tell you where the community is, but it tells you where the record industry is? So where do you look to determine where the people are these days?
Well, for me, it's hard for me to listen to the radio. What's on the radio?
WQXR, WNYC.
I find my way. I find myself with music. I find myself listening to classical music. The older I get, because I find myself knowing what that will be. Now, when I want to experiment with something else, I have great friends that bring music for me to hear, and that's the only way that I hear new music. I use my friends as my personal Pandora, and I have these great friends that always bring this good music to me, and without that, it's just classical music.
Mm-hmm. In King Hedley, there is an infusion of hip hop. I think Public Enemy was used in King Hedley. And here's what August said about hip hop. He said that hip hop is the spiritual fist of the culture. Catherine, how do you reckon that? Bill, how do you deal with that as a musician? How do we insert that into the story?
That's a very good question. Bill?
I look at hip hop as the new blues. It's the story of a disenfranchised people, as the blues is. Tell their story. What's happening in the neighborhood? What's happening in the hood? And it's got to be, the story. It goes back to Africa. I mean, even though I went to Africa, and Africans told me that they love the blues, but they really can't play it because it's not African. It's African American. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so hip hop is just an extension of that. It's that oomph is there, and they're telling a story that all the people can sit back and go, amen. I mean, I listen to hip hop. I listen to Public Enemy. I got Public Enemy on my list. I listen to what I'm getting ready to write for August Wilson. I listen to that. I listen to Mahalia Jackson. I go to gospel a lot. Listen to all our music. It's
an extension of oral history. It's an extension of what is going on in the environment right now and in the community right now. And there's a fearlessness that is unleashed in the hip hop tradition that I find to be very, very refreshing. Actually, I mean, there's times when, that I find aspects of it a little misogynist and things of that nature that I kind of have to adjust my neck a little bit. But for the most part, I appreciate that they're purging this emotional wellspring of whatever they're going through. They're getting it out. They're letting people know that we're a force to be dealt with and to be recognized. And so I find that the arts in general have always had that ability to heighten awareness, attention, and then galvanize a community. And I appreciate that. I'm very, very, at times, appalled and saddened by the way the arts have been just taken out of the school systems and how there's just been this dumbing down of the need to inspire creative self-expression. Because once that happens, then you start to dumb down the critical thinkers and the trailblazers and those resources that we have in our human spirit to affect great change and transformation. So yeah, there's a lot about hip hop that sometimes I don't necessarily agree with aesthetically, but the intention of it I find to be very refreshing.
Mm-hmm. But Terrance, when you get to the later plays, you get to King Hedley, you get to Radio Golf and such. From August's mouth directly to my ear, he still was listening to the blues. He listened to the other music, and he had some of it in his collection. Mm-hmm. He had Wu-Tang, and he had Biggie, and he had Tupac in his collection. He listened to it because he was a worldly man, smart man, and that's part of our culture also. But even in his later plays, one of his later plays, last plays was Gem of the Ocean. August was still listening to the blues because it was the thing about the blues is it spoke directly to us and about us, for us, not me. Not me, even though he was telling, or like, if you listen to Big Bill Broonzy, that's somebody you listen to and you hear the story straight and clear, unadulterated, unapologetic. You know, when will I be called a man? He talks about being a little boy and they call him a boy, and then he getting to be 20 and they call him a boy, and he got to the army and fought in the war and they still call him a boy, and then he was 45 and 60 and they still call him a boy. When will I be called a man? I mean, listen to the song Black, White, Brown, Brown, Stick Around, Black, Get Back. Listen to Big Bill. And what he was saying is, he wasn't saying, I'm sorry about who I am. He was saying, I see what y'all doing to me, but look at me. So even in his later years, and the thing sometimes, it's great that hip hop created these young black entrepreneurs, but what we have to be very careful about is how does that facilitate better growth in our community collectively. So when you get into that I, me thing later and start putting each other down, where when I came from a generation where we were just trying to glue it together, and Lackawanna with Lackawanna Blues and my mom and everybody, she was just trying to glue the community together. Then all of a sudden we start, I'll cap him and bust him and then go smoke a blunt. And it's like, what just happened here? So when rappers and hip hop people start calling Belafonte a boy and stuff like that, then we got a problem. Belafonte put his life on the line for us. Belafonte went to jail for us. Mr. Belafonte, you can't call him a boy in whatever record you playing. Big Bill and nobody else would ever done that. So we just have to make sure that when you have millions of people listening to something you're saying, like tonight, we have millions of people hopefully will listen to this. So hopefully we said something that was important. And it's a lot of hip hop artists say very KRS-One. It's a lot of people that say very empowering things about our culture. And do y'all remember who we are? Don't ever forget, because it's in our DNA. Like Brother Fagan said, that we're from kings and queens and inventors and doctors and teachers and reverends and mothers and fathers. And we're not, when you look at me and the first thing you see is a descendant of a slave, and something's wrong. So we have to re-educate ourselves, and August is doing that by placing the African-American culture, that celebration, smack in front of you, where you have to look directly at us and appreciate. The blues, Romare Bearden, Garth Fagan, all of us as artists that need to cry out and have a distinct, clear, unapologetic voice. Our art is our song of immortality. Whenever, August used to say that if aliens dug up blues albums or Duke Ellington concerto, they would know who we were. They could piece together through the blues or Romare. If you look at his, when I direct, I ask my designers to look at I'll take them a Romare Bearden painting. I said, this is the palette. And they see the palette. We dress up, and Tazaki said that we dress up, we look pretty. We we put colors on. So when people dumb down August, that's an insult. When you celebrate him, through the music, through the words, through the lyrics, our arguments, the good and bad of who we are, because we just whole people. But rarely do we get a chance to be whole on the American stage or film or TV. That's August Wilson giving us.
So you brought up the word empower.
Well said.
Was August trying to empower a community, or was he just telling a story? So, whatever your response to that is, second question is, how did he deal with stereotypes? I mean, Ken talked about this, not all black people can dance and sing. Not all black people necessarily have great rhythm. How did August deal with those types of stereotypes? And did he use stereotypes to try and empower this community, or was he just simply trying to tell a story that was important to him?
I don't think August ever simply just told a story. Everything he did, even when it was just passing time in a play like that Men do in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, it's not just passing time. When they just start talking about, when I come up here on the so-and-so railroad. No, don't tell that lie. That railroad didn't come to Pittsburgh. It's the way, it's the ritual of manners, as James Baldwin used to say, of how we do things. We have to do things differently than everybody else. The rules is different for us. That young man walking down there in Florida, the rules was different. Walking was a crime. Walking for Floyd Barton in 7 Guitars was a crime. You gonna do something. I'm arresting you in advance because you gonna do something. That ain't changed. That play is about 1948. So August, all art is political, and August never was just telling a story to tell a story. He was talking about men and women finding their rightful place in the world. That's what they're doing. They saying, let me tell you a story because I'm smarter and brighter and funnier and more amusing than you are. So it's never just a story, ever, never.
I'm wondering about, and we're going to take some audience questions. If you guys have any questions, we're going to have a microphone set up right here, and so just stand right here, and we'll get to your question. But I'm wondering about, and any of you can take this. Langston Hughes wrote plays that dealt with gospel music and that dealt with blues. Langston was known for, reciting his poems over blues. What space does August Wilson fill? What did he do differently? What story did he tell that hadn't already been told? And when those aliens look down 200 years from now, how will they distinguish between those people Langston talked about and those people that August talked about?
Well, the people that Langston spoke of, even though he wrote about the blues, when I hear of Langston, I think about jazz. I think about the Harlem Renaissance. I think about gowns and jackets and parties all night and rent parties. It's not as, but when I think about August Wilson, it seems to be a little more accessible to me. There's something about August Wilson. It seems to be, it's my uncles and my aunts and people around talking. When I hear Langston, it's sexy, it's something very foreign to me. It's something that was hard for me to reach. It was something for me to dream of. August Wilson, I could go in their backyard and be there with my uncles. And that being said, that is why I think August's work it can be so exciting, because the words seem to be able to reach me quicker than the urban jive and the urban slang that I knew nothing about. Until now, because I live in Harlem now. Now I know all about it right now.
And you mentioned jazz, and jazz is ours, and jazz mixes blues, hip-hop included in contemporary jazz, Latin rhythms, contemporary jazz. So it's like a melding of all that we have been from slavery through today. And when you talk about hip-hop, the best conversations I have with my granddaughter and grandson is about hip-hop, because they get excited, they get articulate, they really feel this and they want to express it. They don't feel that way about jazz. And the blues they consider old, but I'll have them sit down and listen to some because I'm that kind of a grandpa. But still, I love to hear the passion and the power with which they speak about the music of their times. And that's what Wilson would have loved about hip-hop, But jazz is tying it all together, and it's ours. And you can find blues, hip-hop, whatever you want to find. Gospel is in jazz. Mm-hmm.
We had a question from an audience member. The question reads, please consider the way the use of music changes as the plays move through the decades. I've long felt that there is less music and less meaning attached to music in the plays of the latter decades. Agree or disagree?
Well, it's different. The earlier decades we were segregated. So, we all sing the same song, all dance the same dance, and was our community. Music changes after the 60s, after integration. The music changes. Our culture changed. Before, it's just like in blues, what I do. Before the 60s, we were the quality control of the blues. and we've lost that quality control because of integration and stuff. But it changed, it does, yeah. It's probably as important to the young kids, what they hear, but it's different. It's different than what it was when we were, the music was Sunday church, after you work in the garden, sitting on the porch, my mother and father's porch, and people all had a garden very close to each other. They'd come sit and they would start singing. Across the street was a church, people after church. We wind up singing with the church on our porch. It was just that community thing, and I think we lost that when integration came. It was good, and we got some things, but we lost some things too.
The music just evolved. It still told the story of the times, and so it didn't have any less significance. If you get to King Hedley, Elmore does a waltz. They waltz with Ruby and Elmore have a waltz. So everything is we as African Americans, we're Americans. We're Americans as much as anybody else. We just have Africa in our DNA, and that just gives us a different glow, and a beautiful glow. And but yes, the music is significant, in all of the plays. It doesn't get less significant, but we sometimes people misconstrue it as getting less significant, but it does not. And if you look at all the plays from Gem of the Ocean, they go to City of Bones, that's African. We go to Juba, that's African and spiritual. You come all the way up into Two Trains Running, and he slow drags on Aretha's Take a Look. He says, come here. Floyd on You Told Me Baby a long time ago, and she said, Floyd, this is the way you're supposed to dance to my song. He dancing all through his songs, all through his plays. Dance, because that's us. Dance and songs. Sometimes that's the only way we could talk if the Underground Railroad, people was singing when they was leaving, singing when they gonna kill old Massa. Old Massa going down tonight. Old head's gonna be rolling well. Next thing you know, Nat Turner that was running around. So we communicated. We never stopped, and the communication is still going on through hip hop and rap. We just gotta make sure we can communicate some of the right stuff. Come on, y'all. Y'all know it's the truth.
What's that lyric still going through my head? Oh,
Mass ain't know what they was talking about.
Thank you all for coming out here so much tonight. I want to thank my panelists. We got a question, and we're going to take this question, but let's just thank the panelists. Ruben Santiago stepping in, Bill Sims Jr., Catherine Bostick, Garth Fagan, Ken Robeson. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I consider you, Mr. McKnight, a part of the panel. And listening to All Ears, I heard you introduced late July or early August. You started All Ears with Mahalia Jackson. I can't think of the song. That's what I hate about getting old. But but anyway, I've heard blues and a little of the gospel and jazz, but I haven't heard anything about spirituals. And there's something so enlightening and angelic and deep in my soul with the spirituals and religion, which is a very strong part of our culture. And a part of that spiritual takes us into another arena of our culture, which is not so much dance as it is fashion. And you see the sisters with the hats and you feel it. And my question to any of you, but especially you starting, your All Ears with Mahalia Jackson, why are we leaving out spirituals in this discussion?
We haven't left them out.
I didn't
They just
hear
have
it.
different names. They moved. It was spirituals in the early turn of the century, and later on they start calling it gospel. But nothing comes without spirit. Jazz comes out of the spirituals. Everything we do comes out of spirit. All this. Look at Joe Turner and Gem of the Ocean. Totally spiritual, but
Felicia
African.
did a very strong rendition of a spiritual in one of the plays.
Joe Turner,
Joe Turner,
But do not be mistaken. The spirituals can never be left out. It's in us, and we are the spirituals, and they are us. You can't. They call them different names because people start labeling what we do. They called it the blues. We didn't say it was the blues. We didn't say it was jazz. It was the people label so they can. When you can label it, you could place it somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
but spirituals
I do.
never left.
I just didn't hear it in this audience this evening.
You didn't hear that when we played that? You
I
didn't hear
heard it, but I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you articulate that. We were talking about spirituals and
Oh, yeah.
being a part of rural West Texas, and coming through that whole Sunday school and BTU and stuff. Like when I'm in an audience with my peers, and I like to say, okay, well, let's say amen, and. We need to know that the spirituals. I know it, but do everybody else know it?
Well, they better. Well, this is how many generations of ministers in your family? So we don't do anything without the spirituals. Nothing.
But spiritual for me, from slavery times on, that's a small part of the Christian. For me, I grew up in a Baptist house. My father was a minister, but that was not our religion when we got here. And whatever we sing, whatever we do, whether it's blues, whether it's gospel, we're trying to say the same thing. I used to joke with my father. We're saying the same thing. When you sing, oh, Lord, I'm saying, oh, baby. We're trying to get to the same place in our life, trying to get that inner peace, that thing going inside of us. And, for me, the blues is very spiritual to me. It's very spiritual. You got a man sitting there telling you what happened to him, what's happened to him in his life, and it's probably the same thing that happened in your life. That's why it's so popular, because everybody can identify it. The same thing when you go to church, when the preacher starts, and everybody saying amen, it's the same thing when Aretha's singing, everybody goes, I understand that. When I hear Aretha, I understand it, I think, much more than somebody who's not black. She's singing to me. I understand why she sings that way, why that's coming from so deep in her heart. And that's
Terrance,
spiritual.
you must remember All Ears and what you started it with Mahalia Jackson. What is that? Please help me out. I'm in the over 60 game.
Yeah, it may have been If I Can Help Somebody. And
No, that wasn't it.
well, I use that one sometimes, and sometimes I start my show with Mahalia singing that because that's what my show is about. It's about using music as a tool to touch somebody's emotion, to either make them
touched
feel
me deeply.
more excited about being excited about, or about feeling excited about being sad. So.
And that's QXR.
And I'm glad you asked that question because it allows me to talk about a talkback that's going to happen here on the 19th. We're going to talk about religion and spirituality and Africa as it relates to the August Wilson series. So I hope to see you there as we'll expand this conversation. I thank my guests. I thank you all for coming out. But I have one more thank you because this project was brought to my attention about 3 or 4 years ago by an executive producer here at our station who said, Terrance, what do you think about bringing August Wilson's plays to the Greene space? All 10 of them. And I said, there are 10? And she said, that's exactly why we need to do this. And her name is Indira Etwaru, and she's in our space right now.
Stand up, Indira.
So on Tuesday, September 17th, there's another conversation. It's called Bringing Black Works to Broadway. Elliot Forrest is going to host that. I'm Terrance McKnight. I'll be back here on September 19th for Religion, Spirituality, and Africa. And finally, on Wednesday, September 25th, the artistic directors of the production will be here in the Greene space, including Ruben Santiago and Stephen McKinley Henderson, who was here a little earlier, so join us there. The plays are sold out, but you can watch them all online at thegreenspace.org. Our deepest gratitude to Constanza Romero of the August Wilson Estate, and a special thanks to MetLife Foundation, supporter of August Wilson's American Century Cycle Talk Series. The signature sponsor is Lincoln Motor Company and philanthropic partner, the Ford Foundation. For all of us here at WNYC, QXR, and the Greene Space, thank you all for coming out.